We are exploring the Four Corners region of the United States, the area where the borders of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico intersect. And we are doing all this aboard a rental RV. So much fun. This is day 3 of our adventure. Good morning. Nothing like a shot of Cuban coffee to start your day. Yep, I'm awake now. Today we are visiting Mesa Verde National Park, near Cortez, Colorado. This area was home to the Ancestral Pueblo People for about 700 years, and then in the late 1200s, for reasons that are not entirely clear, they all moved away. The brand new Visitors Center opened in 2012, and it has all these displays depicting how archaeologists think the Ancestral Pueblo People lived daily life. The tools they used, how they made their pottery, and how they built their different types of dwellings. Let's go into the park. Oh, by the way, one very important thing to keep in mind is that in order to visit the main sites, such as the Cliff Palace, the Balcony House, the Longhouse, you must purchase the tickets beforehand at the Visitor Center. It would really suck to drive all the way into the park and not be able to see at least one of these sites. We have a pretty long uphill drive here to the mesa's top at 8,500 feet. Fantastic panoramic views of the Mancos and Montezuma valleys. We stop here briefly at the Montezuma Valley Overlook. Very nice views of the valley, and it's also where the old Knife Edge Road used to go through. Sometimes I leave the camera on inadvertently and get these nice time lapses. Further along, we have a fortuitous encounter with a baby black bear, and leave it up to me to show up with a big RV and scare him away. Sorry to spoil the show, folks. And another great view of the valley. The camera just doesn't do it justice. And another pretty time-lapse. You gotta love the clouds. We reached the top of the mesa and stopped by a primitive pit house, one of the many in the area. Because of their partial underground construction with a roof, they were warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and typically had a small antechamber and a larger main chamber. Our next stop is the Navajo Canyon Overlook, where we get this pretty good view of the canyon. As the weather begins to deteriorate, we stop by the Sun Temple. From here we can see the Cliff Palace, which we will visit next. In our excitement, we forgot to see the actual Sun Temple. Maybe we'll have time later. Let's visit the Cliff Palace. First, we go down these abrupt stairs with these great views of the canyon and another dwelling on the other side. Here we are waiting for the guide. We go up this ladder right next to the structure. We are treated to this very thorough exposition by this very enthusiastic and knowledgeable ranger. We learn about their water source, which apparently seeped through the rocks from snow melt above.
A seep spring. Pretty much, if you think about it, it's a leaky faucet. Possibly 4 generations just putting this together. And it seems that it goes up in 4 cycles. The first is right here. And we find they're probably building in the left-hand corner first, because this is going to capture the most winter sun. And you got a nice source of easy, free heat. But then the community gets bigger. Might have gotten more popular. And over time, room by room, they add on. As the family expands, the city expands. Archaeologists think that most of these structures, especially in the middle, probably went up to 3 stories. Maybe not anymore. You had storage in the upper attic there. Only thing we don't find are Christmas ornaments. But some places we did find a couple pots, blankets, tools left up there. Not too much though. And then down below, all the square structures, you have your living rooms, your family rooms, storage, and bedrooms. And they had trails very similar to what we came down, just not very deep steps like that. They're very shallow, dug into the rock just enough to get you toe purchase, but they're hidden for the most part. You have to know where it is, you gotta know what to look for. We will see an original trail as we make our way out. That is an original exit and entrance, the way we're gonna leave today. Maybe a rope system, bringing the pots of water up, down, maybe just bringing all the materials that you need down into the site. Probably some industrial accidents here and there. Because all the rope was made out of the yucca plant. Over at Step House, we found 1,300 feet double ply yucca fiber rope. Continuous strand, coiled up in a basket. Somebody had nothing else better to do. Or that was that person's main job. We don't know too much about society when we're looking at these structures. All we find are pots and utility tools. That's it. No writing, very little pictographs or petroglyphs. Just a ghost town sitting inside the cliff. So some think maybe the smaller dwellings up top in the cliffs, they might have been your potters, your weavers, your rope makers, your sandal.
One that we see across, you see one from up above, across, just kind of all by itself.
All by itself. And that's how most of them are. About every 500 feet, usually down the canyon, there's some dwelling, some structure inside. Either just hanging off on one of the shelves that's maybe 2 feet wide, or they've got a nice little alcove right there. And this was the center, possibly. So when we think about putting this together, you want to take it apart block by block. And if you want, as we make our way down to the middle in just a minute here, I'm going to leave this here, pick this up, see what a small block feels like. And just imagine coming down the trail or roping this down 2, 3, 5 of these pieces, amassing the materials to put your home together.
This was perhaps the aqueduct, fascinating the ingenuity of these ancient dwellers.
What we find is that these people had to start relearning how to build inside the alcove. For a good 200 years at least, they're building stone pueblos up on top. They know how to work on a flat surface, building up from there. But if you look at all these boulders hanging out around us, you got to work around that. They're using the original material left. So if you look at this bottom wall here, that is very sad compared to this. And I do have to put a disclaimer on that. That is partial Park Service reconstruction. But it looks like from the original foundation that we found, they're using all those angular pieces, just getting it up in a hurry so they can start building it. And then the master masons show up. The walls are almost perfectly smooth, or they were at one time originally. But there's a problem. Anybody pick up that small block up over there? Is that light? No. And this mortar is just a basic sand, clay, water mixture. You put that down, let it set up. If your block is too heavy, it might make that ooze out all over the place. So they figure out a tool. It's all these little tiny stones that either they're chipping away or they're the remnants of all these carvings. And they start pressing them into the mortar from both sides of the wall, forcing that mortar into the middle. Once the chinking stones reach the outside, they're flush with the wall, they then patch those gaps with more mortar to smooth it out and to finish. So you have stabilization with recycled material. And in some places with original walls, you can still see fingerprints where they pushed that mortar in and smoothed it out so many years ago. You get high enough, you need to add a roof, you need to add a floor.
They made their roof supports with wood from juniper trees.
But the one thing we ask, where are they finding straight juniper?
Apparently, there are not enough straight juniper trees in this area to build the many rooms in this dwelling. Here we can see the other smaller dwelling on the other side of the canyon, and our only chance to see the Cliff Palace without any tourists in it. A little further along, we learn about these rooms called the kivas. The ingenuity involved in their construction is amazing. Kiva means literally underground in the Hopi language.
And they start building the roof halfway inside this room. Hexagonal ring after hexagonal ring, each one getting smaller and smaller as it made its way higher and higher. Eventually, once it got about right where I'm standing here, there would be a square hole directly in the center of the roof. All three of these kivas that we just walked by, this was one large open courtyard. And what we know for this size kiva here in the park, especially in the cliff dwellings, this is a family room. This is where they're probably sleeping in the winter. It's going to be the warmest place. You find anchor points in the floor where they're doing weaving, and they're tying their looms off to the ceiling. Probably the classroom for the children while the parents are up farming. Grandparents might take these little ones in, tell them the stories, the histories. And at certain times of the year, it's also going to be a ceremonial site as well. This is a prayer room where they contact their ancestors to bring the rain, which almost hit us today, to call for healing, to keep the family alive. This was the center of the family. Each one represents at least one family group. But when we think about the functionality of this room, you've got a fire pit in the middle. You've got a chimney. You need one more thing. You need a lot of air going into that room to keep the fire alive and to push the smoke up and out. So what we find is that the vent shaft starts just beyond that little wall there on the planking, goes straight down to that little door. That's the fresh air intake, pulling that air in. But they realized you get too much of a draft, you're going to blow your fire out, you're going to blow ash all over the inside of the room. So they build that wall to deflect the air around the fire, push the smoke up and out, and reflect the heat back into the room. And just that little simple unit right there is ancient technology for these people. The pit houses of the 400s are built almost identically, just not as deep. And the round tower, right in the middle.
The round tower, besides being an observation tower to spy on the neighbors across, was apparently also their observatory. The window would frame solstices and equinoxes, and so they knew when to plant and harvest. It was their clock tower, if you will. It is incredible to think that we had no idea this civilization existed until 1888, when these ruins were discovered by ranchers. That was one great tour, wasn't it? Let me tell you, I have nothing but praise for the National Park Service. I have not met one person who wasn't pleasant, helpful, or extremely passionate about their job. Before traveling further west, we stopped one last time by the Fire Lookout, the highest point in the park, at 8,572 feet above sea level. From the park point overlook, we get to see these spectacular panoramic views of the Montezuma Valley. We can even see the town of Cortez in the distance. That's it. We are leaving the park for good, with beautiful views as we descend from the mesa. We pass by the Ute Mountain Indian Reservation, and yes, they do have a casino. The Chimney Rock to our left. We turn to the west, immersing ourselves into one of the most remote areas of North America. It is our intent to reach the epicenter of the Four Corners region, the very spot where the borders of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico intersect. 2 hours later, we arrive at the Four Corners Monument.
Here I am at the Four Corners Monument. That's Utah back there.
And here I'm walking and now I'm in Colorado. It's smoke weed. Now I'm in New Mexico. And now I am in Arizona. 1 hour earlier. Later, after that. Recent surveys have determined that the monument is actually 1,807 feet east of the actual Four Corners point. Still, pretty accurate considering the instruments available at the turn of the 20th century, when they originally surveyed the area. I do have one complaint. The grounds are not very well maintained. You would think that with the $15 the Navajo people charge you to visit the monument and the revenue from all the souvenir sales, they could afford a paved parking lot. Just saying. Onward we go. I, of course, take a photo with the nearby signs for New Mexico and Colorado, and let's include Arizona and Utah as well. Nice, huh? This is the only time in our trip where we actually step on New Mexico soil. We continue riding into the sunset, now going deep into the Navajo Nation, which is a huge area encompassing northeastern Arizona, parts of New Mexico and Utah. After a little over an hour or so, we start seeing the formations of the Valley of the Gods in the horizon. Let me tell you, I would love to do some exploring around this area. The Valley of the Gods is like a smaller version of Monument Valley, if you will, where we're going tomorrow, by the way. But, unlike Monument Valley, is not part of the Navajo Nation. It belongs to the Bureau of Land Management, which means you can camp in the area and have more freedom to roam around. As the night falls, we arrive at Goosenecks National Park, where we will boondock for the night. I picked this location mainly because it is very close to the Valley of the Gods, Mexican Hat, and Monument Valley, which we can actually see in the distance. We have this beautiful view overlooking a deep meander of the San Juan River. But another reason why I picked this location is because of the lack of light pollution. Tonight, after the moon sets, I look forward to seeing the Milky Way for the first time in my life. We see these beautiful moonlight reflections on the San Juan River, and eventually the moon sets, and then stars I've never seen before reveal themselves, and the Milky Way, of course. I even experiment with some long exposure photography. With less than 2 hours of sleep, we look forward to the next day. Good morning! In the next video, we will visit Monument Valley, which is a spectacularly unique place, better known as the backdrop of many Hollywood westerns. I hope you have enjoyed our adventure so far. By the way, don't forget to subscribe and check out my previous videos. Also, visit the blog, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media. Until the next time, thank you so much for watching and see you on the road.